encouraged.
Can we get a cup of coffee in here, please?
Damn good coffee and hot.
Wake up, America. You've got a dog that needs walking. That's right, sunshine. Just put on a big pot of strong coffee and get ready to type your little hate mail with your opinions about kumbaya and flat earth insanity. Stand-up comedy? You want stand-up comedy? Well, we've got sit-down comedy. It's time for Coffee with a Dog. You make me laugh.
I'll wait for the band to finish whatever they are doing. Sometimes it plays just a little too long. That can happen. Every day. It can happen every day. All right, guys. One more. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, folks. It is Thursday, August 10th, 2023. Great day to be alive. Hope it's a great day wherever you are. We are going to talk about Nazis today. People have been telling me for years that I should be talking to a psychiatrist, and I guess they're going to get their wish today. We're going to be talking to a psychiatrist author about some of the bad. There are so many bad things associated with Nazi Germany, and she's written a memoir about it because she has a direct connection to it. And I think it's really important to have this discussion, especially now, because, man, it seems like we forget history. It wasn't that long ago, folks. It was not that long ago that we should be just slipping back into a coma and forgetting these things. And anti-Semitism is on the rise, and Holocaust denial is on the rise. So it's an important discussion to be having. Later on in the show, speaking of stand-up comedy, Robert Taylor will be here with thank you for your service. And we'll talk about what's going on with him. He's got some military shows going on. And then tonight on the program, on the evening program, meet the author. I have a guy who he's written a novel about Bigfoot. I'm not sure if he's a real Bigfoot believer. He's written a novel about a fictional Bigfoot search team versus some people who are out there trying to debunk Bigfoot, the legend of Bigfoot. And so it should be an interesting talk. He actually was a local guy, my neighborhood growing up. So it should be an interesting conversation tonight. And then tomorrow, big news, Greg Charley, the man behind the scenes with Mitch Hedberg and then Doug Stanhope, Doug Stanhope, will be with us. And we'll talk about his very interesting life and all that he has done to get where he was and the life he's gotten, whether he's expected or whether it was expected or planned or he just fell into it. Lots of questions for Mr. Charley. I've never had a one-on-one with Greg Charley. I've had conversations with just about everybody in his orbit. Of course, not Mitch Hedberg, the late Mitch Hedberg. So it should be an interesting conversation. And then that will lead into issues with Andy on your Friday morning, and everything will be good in the world. So that's what you can expect. We're going to meet our author in just 1 minute. Before we do, I want to just say we have a new sponsor on the website. betanysport.eu. If you are a gambling person and looking to play game online and make a few bucks gambling, we have that offer for you. Now, uh, don't abuse this. That's all I'm going to say. You know, I don't want to be responsible for anybody's gambling getting out of control. This is my ambivalence about having a gambling sponsor. But if you're looking to just, make some games more interesting, not bet serious money, and just have some fun with it, it is there for you. betanysports.eu. Uh, there's a link on the website, but you can just go directly there. But as usual, our daily sponsor is Koa Coffee. Koa Coffee, as you know, is one of the top 10 coffees in the world, and it's rated number one in America by Forbes magazine, Best of America. And it is grown on the slopes of the Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii, where Hawaii's got some serious things going on. Maui is on fire. I don't if you're not aware, tragedy going on over there in Hawaii, and we wish those people all the best. I know a lot of people have lost their homes. A lot of people have lost property and businesses. So it's a tragic thing, and we'll continue to follow that story. I don't mean to bum everybody out, but we're going to start off with a little cold coffee commercial, and we'll be back and we'll meet our author. And I will be a little more energetic and a little more woken up because I'm going to guzzle some coffee while we're away at commercial. I'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by Koa Coffee. If you are a coffee connoisseur and want to experience the best coffee Hawaii has to offer, no blends, no compromise, try the true taste of aloha. Koa Coffee produces premium Hawaiian coffee, hand-picked, expertly roasted, and delivered from Hawaii to your door with aloha. From award-winning 100% Kona coffee grown on the slopes of the Mauna Loa volcano to the unique mocha beans of Maui, they strive to provide their loyal customers with the best quality and freshness. Since 1997, Koa Coffee has been known far and wide as a product of utmost quality, and their awards prove it. Koa Coffee was featured in Forbes' Top 10 Coffees of the World. This is the coffee Forbes called the best coffee in America. Find out what it's all about. Go to minddogtv.com/coffee. Find out what it's all about. It's about coffee. It's about in the morning. About waking up. About getting your brain started. That's what it's about. And it's good coffee. It tastes good. And it's not about pretty girls running on the beach looking back at you. That's what it's not about. Find out what it's all about. Koa Coffee. Man, I gotta learn to go to bed at night. It's my problem. Last night I was up very late working with AI vocalists, singers, and man, singers are gonna get replaced. Yeah, that's a doom and gloom type of attitude to have, but I think it's real, man. The software I'm working with, all you have to, if you know music at all, you type in the melody, you type in the words, you can add vibrato, pitch shift, and that kind of stuff, and you can mimic some of the greatest singers, or it sound incredibly real now, today, with a great singer that never existed, somebody who's not a flesh and blood, but a sum of zeros and ones, and creating great art or performing great art. And it's scary good. It's scary good now. So imagine where it's going to be 6 months, a year, 5 years from now. And then I was working with some other software that actually has a list of hundreds and hundreds of singers, where you can take that piece you just created with an AI stuff, and they sound really human and really proficient. And you can map that onto any singer that they have in their category. They've done a voice print of, like, it could be somebody from pop, hip hop, even Frank Sinatra. Even Frank Sinatra. You could, and it was scaring me. And I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning doing that. So I'm a little bit shot today, but not boding well for people in the arts. Anyway, let's get on to today's program. I've been fascinated with the history of Nazi Germany my entire life. I have some ties back to the atrocities of that. My grandmother was a German Jew. She comes from a German Jewish family, and they fled long before Hitler came to power. But I think in, they were pretty astute in seeing the handwriting on the wall. Anyway, I have been really troubled lately in the last probably 10 years because of the way we are forgetting the history and the really scary parts of the history where not just one or two evil people can assert their will and really change um, the minds of people, but how many people will actually follow along and blindly become brainwashed? I don't know if brainwashed. Well, I guess my guest is probably an expert on that, being that she's a psychiatrist. Let's just get right to it. Joanne Entrada's life, Dr. Joanne Entrada's life, has been shaped by being the daughter of German Jewish refugees. Since childhood, she's pondered why people perpetrate atrocities like me on their fellow human beings. After studying European history at Connecticut College, she received an MD from Columbia University and became a psychiatrist. She did a fellowship in psychiatry and law at Albert Einstein, mentored by Dr. Robert Hare. She spearheaded the first brain imaging research on well-defined psychopaths. Wow. Published in the Journal of Biological Psychiatry. Her book is called Summons to Berlin, My Memoir. Ladies and gentlemen, please open your ears, open your minds, and help me welcome in Dr. Joe Entrada to Coffee with a Dog. Dr. Entrada, welcome.
Hey, good morning. I'm delighted to be on this show with you. I'm a coffee drinker.
Oh, good.
Sense, and we've got similar backgrounds. And I
Yeah.
think similar interests. Yeah. So, what can I say? I've kind of been on this subject since I'm a little girl. Since my parents, I was born in '46. And my parents both were refugees and lost relatives, were able to get out. But it's the whole Holocaust had a profound effect on my upbringing, partly because I was a very curious child. And also, a lot of elderly people around me were dying very, very young. I didn't have any grandparents after the age of 8. Though they made it over, they sort of died precipitously. And I think as a psychiatrist, I think it was the stress and having to leave and those years of uncertainty and harassment and brutalization. So it was always on my mind, and I was always kind of fascinated with the bad guys, in part because I was terrified of them. And so I figured, if I'm terrified of them, I better know who they are.
Right.
I got to be ready for this. So I wound up reading sort of dark books when I was a kid, late at night, Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, all sorts of dark things. When the books started to come out about, the Holocaust, I read them. And then I wound up doing history and then wound up in medical school. And as a I became a psychiatrist, and I got into I did this fellowship in psychiatry and law at Albert Einstein, and where I was assessing medical patients who had psychiatric, problems, who had committed crimes. And the issue was to assess how much their psychiatric pathology affected their decision making as to whether to commit a crime or not. And I ran a criminal court clinic in the Bronx for a little while. And there I came across a lot of guys, not a lot, just a few, who'd been arraigned for possibly being involved in child abuse in daycare centers. And these were really well put together people that came to see me who I was supposed to assess, and I had not a clue as to how to go about this. There was nothing in the psychiatric mental status exam that could tell me what to do. And that's how I found Dr. Robert Hare in British Columbia. And he and I started a correspondence, and ultimately we did this sort of fabulous uh, brain imaging of well-characterized psychopaths, showing that there were different ways of processing negatively charged emotional language. In other words, if you use the word, their brain processing of Hitler or the word maggot or dark words was different than the normal subjects. It was a very small study, but it was statistically correct. And it's been repeated, not repeated, but mentioned in over 300 papers since then. At the same time as doing this, my father was was dying, and at his he was in Florida. My mother had died many years before. I thought he was in a coma, and he's lying in bed, and all of a sudden he sits up like a young man, and he looks at me and he says, "Are you tough enough yet? And do they know who you are?" Goes right back down. 2 days later, he's gone. He's dead. We never talked about it. I didn't know what he meant at first. And then I remember that in 1967, I went to Berlin and I was supposed to do an errand to see the man who took care of my grandparents while they were in their apartment in Berlin and not allowed, too dangerous to leave. And I was supposed to, I was like a proof of life. Like I was supposed to go and say, "Hey, look, this generation's alive." I couldn't make it from my hotel to where this man was. I tried several times and I had a panic attack, a virtual panic attack. And I called my father and I said, "I can't go. I can't do it. And please let me come home." I went back to New York. So when he did this thing at the end of his life, he's saying, "There's a project waiting here for you. Are you going to be ready for it?" So he was thinking back to 67. He had,
Wow.
he had just found out, maybe a year before, that a very large uh, manufacturing building, enormous building, which was behind the Iron Curtain, had our family's name on what's called the Grundbuch. It's the history of the ownership of the building. And now that the wall was down, our names came up to apply for restitution. And it was my father's name, his older brother, and other relatives. And so he had this in mind. And what happened was, simultaneous to doing this work with Bob Hare on psychopaths, I started to go to Berlin in 1993. I really hit myself hard. I had the research going on one hand, and I had the real life situation on the other.
And all of it very dark.
It was all dark, but I needed it. I needed it because of the way I operate. It's called counterphobic. If I'm scared, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm not the kind that jumps off of buildings, but if it's intellectually and psychiatrically challenging, even though it might be hurtful to me, and it usually is, I will go for it. So I
Wow.
started these trips to Germany, and at first I was like a typical German child when I dealt with the lawyers that were to help me on this case. I was like my dogs at home that lay down and roll their bellies up to me to show that I'm the master. I fell into this German trap of this. Everything is in order. Everything is regimented. I am the lawyer. You are the client. I'm not going to call you Dr. Intrator. I'm going to call you Frau. I'm going to make you smaller psychologically. And it worked. It worked for a little while.
Wow.
And then I started over a period of time getting my act together. And I did it in a kind of bizarre way. I would go 1995 at the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. I went to the concentration camp outside of Berlin called Sachsenhausen. Now the concentration camps are all cleaned up and nice sidewalks. This was terrible. It was a snowy, muddy day, and I hired a car and driver to take me there. And I walked this camp all by myself with the driver behind me. And there I decided I had to get my act together with these lawyers and find out what the hell's going on. And I stepped up my game and started pushing. And ultimately, I hired a international investigator. And we found out that the building not only was used to make the Nazi flag that you saw at the Olympics, the 1936 Olympics, but they also made the first 1 million stars that were sewn on Jews to identify them so that they could be shipped east.
Wow.
Yes, I found all this out.
Now that
And
was your family's building?
yes, yes.
Wow.
My grandfather, what happened is he was he lost the building in what's called a forced auction, which means he couldn't pay. It was in 38. The Nazis were in power since 33. The people that took the building, they said my grandfather was a bad businessman. So I had to fight these guys for 9 years. They wanted me to pay them off so that they would go away. My lawyers wanted me to pay it off so I would go away. It was a very, very hard experience, to say the least.
I
It
I
really
have
broke me.
questions. Uh, when
Yeah,
when you say restitution, who pays the restitution? The German government? Because the
yeah.
Nazis, if and I'm not naive to think that Nazis don't exist anymore, but they don't. There's not like a central Nazi
Reservoir of money. No,
yeah.
no.
So
Yeah.
who pays the restitution? The German government?
Well, it's whoever buys the building. In other words, it's a determination of who I had to fight these people who right to the very end. And actually, I really held up the possibility of the sale of this big property because the ownership I wasn't letting go. Everybody wanted me to, to make a deal with these people, split the building as if it were, piece of cake. You have this, I have this.
Right.
Um, and so I held it up. It took a very long time. The building's value had deteriorated because I insisted on the truth. I was a real pain in the neck for a lot of people, but the more they pushed at me, the more, I wouldn't give up. And ultimately, with the help of this extraordinary lawyer in New York, who was like an advisor, he was a refugee himself, got to New York before my father got to New York. My father would have been a lawyer in New York. Hans became the head of one of the first Jewish law firms in New York. And Hans was a man in his 80s, and he gave me advice about this whole case, very sensitive to my issues. He ultimately, 9 years into this, said, I need to give a little bit or I am ruining my own life.
Wow.
I've got to get out of this thing that I created. And so we came up with a small amount so that I could get back to my husband, to my son, to my career, and I could calm down. And so it's something called soul murder, when you go after something to such a degree that you're ruining your own life. That's what was going on with me there towards the end.
Wow.
And so
Do you feel like you did get justice in the end?
I got my own kind of justice, which is not being pushed around.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
I understand that.
it,
Because
it- yeah.
when you talk about the atrocities of the Nazis, um, money can't repay what
Oh,
they
that's
did.
bullshit. Excuse my language.
No, you can say whatever you want here. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's no way that money alone could make that right in anybody's wildest imagination. So I just wonder how do you get to the feeling like you really got justice?
Well, the thing that is, first of all, my you should know what my amount was of all these relatives, 3.15%. It barely paid for my trips back and forth to Germany. It was not it in the
Oh.
beginning, it was like, oh, I'm going to get money from my son's college fund. I was thinking like that. That went out the window the moment these guys started not talking to me in a truthful way and pushing me around. Then the whole issue became, I'm going to find out what happened. And the restitution for me was the truth. That's what it is.
Yeah, I could.
No difference to me financially. I wasn't going to let them get away with what they were doing.
That
They were
is that's what's really eating at me is and I'm not gonna try to make this all political or any of that kind of stuff, but I feel like, and I'm wondering if you have this shared sense that we are forgetting all this
absolutely.
history and just we are allowing ourselves to be vulnerable to be persuaded as a society back into a really dark
I agree
place.
with you.
And so how do you prevent that from, because education obviously isn't enough. We talk about it all the time. The Nazis are like one of the top television programming things. I mean, you have the Hitler channel, I call it, the History Channel, is nothing but Hitler. So it's not like the messages aren't there. It's just people don't absorb it or just ignoring it. What's your take on that?
I tell you something, I think we've got a big problem. Uh, I think we're at a particularly precipitous time in the world, and where people are afraid. And when people are afraid, they line themselves up with kind of tyrannical kind of people who have the answer. And we're having that all over the world, whether it's Putin, whether it's some people here in the United States, whether it's in South America, whether it's in the Middle East. When people are afraid, and they're afraid of a lot of things, there's been a lot of economic issues. We are in the middle of devastation, climate change. We're also in the middle of the largest movement of refugees that have ever existed on the earth. So there is so many disorienting things that they're afraid. And when people are afraid, they find themselves attracted to the so-called strong man.
Or the
And
simple and easy answer.
right, which is what happened really with Hitler. They came out of World War One. They were devastated. They had no money. The men were broken, paralyzed, dead. And the Versailles Treaty was much too tough. It made it impossible for the Germans. And here's this guy with a solution, and you know, and you grab onto it. And the German personality, I think, and maybe this is unfair, they have an authoritarian history. I shouldn't say. I have many German friends who are not like this at all, but historically, they come from there's an authoritarian type of background, primarily when you read about Bismarck, everything is in its proper place,
Right.
and the boss is here, the employees here, the husband's here, the wife's here, the child's here. It's all fixed. I actually grew up in a household like that. That's why I was so vulnerable when I originally went to Berlin, is because the German lawyers, and I'm just a girl, doesn't
Right.
matter if I'm a doctor and smart. So that kind of authoritarianism makes everyone feel as if everything's in order. There's a place. So there's a gravity towards that kind of thinking. You're seeing that with the Supreme Court. You're seeing that in Florida. You're seeing it in different places where these types of possibilities are the stepping stone for something worse. And I'm just hoping that that's not the case. But
Me too. Me too. One of the things I've been fascinated by, and one of the subjects I keep coming back to in lots of different conversations, not just on the societal level, but this idea of good and evil, and
yeah,
whether it exists in as a force, a universal force like electromagnetism and gravity, weak force and strong force, or is it does it come from the human mind? But I think what you just said there kind of first time a little light bulb went off that fear is the it seems to be the core element, the DNA of evil. Uh,
you in my book, I have it's just 2 pages. It's the author's note. I pull it all together from the Nazi past to my experience to what's going on right now. I just pull the whole. It's just what we're talking about, fear.
right.
Yeah, and
So,
how we fix that, I don't know.
s-
I
i- i-
don't know.
yeah. So psychopathy. uh,
Yeah.
is that is that necessarily part of evil, or can we, can somebody be completely not a psychopath, just a normal functioning, it's normal is a difficult word, I'm struggling because I'm not a psychiatrist to find the right words, but absent of psychopathy, can somebody become evil?
It's an interesting question. Uh, psychopaths, cold, ruthless, lack of empathy. They don't have to be medically insane. They don't have to be, criminal. They can be heads of corporations. They can be, functioning in the business world and in a ruthless, cold way without any consideration of the impact of on others. You can have that kind of psychopath. Then you can have the more deranged kind of psychopath. Um, I don't know. Evil comes really out of the church, I think, the word evil. I don't know, out of
Right.
religion. I think we're capable. I mean, Freud basically said, we we have good sides and very bad sides. We have a desire for life and a desire for death. I don't know my Freud very well, but he speaks of it as human nature.
Right.
It's you know
Yeah, when Robert Klein I
oh,
had a conversation with
yeah,
him, and we talked about 'cause he's a history buff, and
yeah,
he talked about, Eisenhower when he got to Auschwitz, and
yeah,
he said, "Get the press in here because someday some son of a bitch is gonna deny this ever happened, and we need to
yeah.
document it and all that." And now we're seeing, if we've seen for a long time, people have been, denying the Holocaust. Do you have
Mm.
any insight? Is it just guilt? Why would people deny something so atrocious if it's not guilt or associated with guilt or is just afraid to look into the darkness that much? What's your take on that?
Don't want to have any responsibility for it. Um, I think it's that. So I guess it's a lot of different things. Don't want that. Do not want to admit that human beings are capable of that. But I think it's responsibility. If you take a look at the Holocaust, you have to understand this was perpetrated by human beings, and one has to think as to what. And this was a very educated country,
Right,
a sophisticated country. One has to start to wonder what leads people down that path. It leads to a lot of inquiry that people are not interested in. So,
right,
um, there are people like you, like me, like Robert Klein. We can't get away from it. We want to know. We want to dig into it. We We want to
make
get
sure it never happens again. And
that.
this is my biggest concern, is because I would understand the forgetfulness if we were 400 years removed from it
Yeah,
or something like that. But
right.
it happened really in my lifetime, not really right before my lifetime, but close enough that my parents were well aware of it. My father went to fight against the atrocities over there. And so to see people forgetting that quickly, it's like, what happened? How did we get here? I have a question for you that it might be a little touchy for some people. Why does it always come back to the Jews being the victims? I mean, throughout history, and I think we're coming back to anti-Semitism. Why are they always the scapegoat? Because you can make scapegoats out of anybody if you chose to. Why
Yeah.
does society always pick on the Jews?
Well, first of all, we established ourselves as outsiders by not believing in that Christ was the Son of God, and there's that inside outside thing. So by 300, Christianity really became formalized. Prior to that, there were Christian Jews, Jewish Christians, and in 300, there was the organization of the Roman Empire as to, from paganism to Christianity.
Right.
Um, and outsiders are really good because outsiders stabilize the inside. You see, if you can say it's over there, you feel stronger. So, and that has nothing to do necessarily with Christians and Jews. That has to do with what happens in the playground, what happens, all over the world. Having someone to blame stabilizes the core group. So you have politicians doing that all the time, and they consolidate their group. The other thing that I think is important is that the 10 Commandments came from Jews. And the idea that we should behave in a moral way probably was a real royal pain in the neck for a lot of people that
Yeah.
that didn't want to know from that.
Right.
So we come with law.
Right.
It's Judaism that brings law to this world.
Right.
So it's no free for all anymore.
Right. I get
So
it. Yeah.
yeah, because in certain religions, all you have to do is apologize a lot. You go on television and you apologize, and everything's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little different. It's more of a big deal for us.
Right. I get it.
I think that's annoying.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Um, are you an optimist
Oh,
for
uh,
society and for the world? And I mean, not for
I
personal. I mean,
don't-
personal.
yeah.
There's a difference between personal optimism. Things are going to be okay for me, and there's things are going to be okay for the
I'm
world.
worried, worried, of course, about the world. There's just too many forces that feel troublesome to me. Uh, on the other hand, if my father were alive, he'd probably say to me, "Nope, Joanne, it's going to be okay." My father, despite everything, always had an optimistic point of view. And I often wonder what he would say had things tipped over too far. So I'd like to think that he would be whispering in my ear and saying, "Yeah, it looks pretty lousy right now, but in the end, we pulled together, particularly this country." He really believed strongly in this country, you
Well,
know.
that's kind of why I asked you, because those people who have been through it, they've been through atrocities and survived it, have good reason to be optimistic, but they also have good reason not to be because they've seen such darkness. So it's a weird place to be in, where you've seen the darkness, it can come back,
Right,
and you know what human beings are capable of, but because you survived it, you have you develop a belief that, I can survive anything if I survive that. It's a strange mindset to find yourself in. But so when you were going, and I won't keep you much longer, but I'm just curious here. When you were doing all this research over in Germany and going through all that stuff, and then finally getting a 3.5% payment, were you writing the book then, or did you have to have a period of reflection and all that before you could start writing it?
I took notes. First of all, I knew I was in a situation where I needed to take notes. So I have many, many diaries from the 9 years back and forth. And I knew I was going to write a book. You know, a girlfriend of mine, when she heard those words of my father at his deathbed, "Are you tough enough?" She said to me, "You're going to begin the book with that. Are you tough enough yet?" And certainly it does begin with that. And yeah, no, I've written, I would say there's at least 10 drafts of this book, and I could even do better than this book, but I said it was enough now. I think it's a really, really strong, strong book, and I'm
Uh,
proud of it.
I
Yeah.
hope I hope people will pick up the book and take it to heart and understand it's not a work of fiction. This is real. It's real
For real.
world stuff. Because I don't know. I just feel like we are just so um accustomed to just like we're not we don't have with the shock of that we should. We don't carry around the outrage that we should. Again, I'm all for forgiveness,
Right,
and which is a hard thing to understand how you can be for forgiveness when things
right.
are so evil. But I'm not for forgetting, and you can be forgiving and not forgetting. And I think we have come to a place where we've got profound forgetting. Someone once defined evil as for me as profound forgetting, and I
Wow.
thought, yeah, a
Wow.
profound forgetting, meaning
I will quote you. Wow.
yeah. So that's one of the things I'm troubled by. Have you received a lot of feedback from the book?
Getting a lot of feedback, nice reviews. I have people writing me on Facebook. I can't put the book down, that kind of stuff. Uh, Girlfriend that I went to elementary school wrote me an enormously long letter last night from San Diego. I'm getting a lot of good feedback. I've heard that the numbers are very good, that Amazon's selling quite a number of them. And, it's in small stores also, and it's actually being sold in Germany and other European countries as well. So,
You know,
and
one of the things that would I think, and I don't know, because the school systems are so hard to figure out. But if you could get it, because I think young people, I mean, my people my age, yes, it's an important read, but it's more important for somebody in their teens and 20s, because those are the people who are most likely to be subjected to similar attacks on society, and they need to understand it. Do you have any idea about the process of getting it included in school curriculums or even mentioned in schools?
I should think about it. I actually did that in Berlin, way after the book was written, way after the case was over. I went to a school and met with students, and they were blown away and fascinated, and wanted to know everything that I could possibly tell them about Germany, which was a wonderful experience. And I should do that again. I go back, and I've gone many times since that case. But here in the United States, I don't know how it would happen. It's the
Yeah,
school it would have
I
to be
think
in.
it's different in every state. I think that's part of the challenge too.
It's not going to go to Florida.
Yeah.
I don't think.
That's so odd. I mean, this, but and again, I don't know any of the big answers. But when I see leprosy coming back to Florida, I think, well, you know what, this
Yeah.
is it feels biblical to me.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. But I'm going to think about what you're saying, because I will be lecturing in places in New York, and there's no reason that younger people can't come to it. But the idea of the school system, I'm going to explore that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's important.
I'd like that very much. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm not even sure whether it goes in history or literature because, generally the
right,
book, it
right,
is a history book, but
right.
it is, yeah, a memoir is generally part of the English curriculum. I don't know, but it's important read no matter what. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us. I do hope, do you feel healed? I mean, I'm
Feel
justice,
much better,
you do?
boy. I do, and I tell you something. Once this book was published last Tuesday, it was a tremendous relief.
Oh, it's only
Tremendous.
been a week. I thought it was out a couple of months. Wow, it's only been a
Yeah,
week.
yeah, you
Uh,
got me early, which is great.
yeah. Well,
So
good luck with it.
conversation.
We'll do whatever we can to support you with it.
Thank you.
We'll mention
Thank
it
you.
again every time I think of it. My memory is like Swiss
I
cheese,
love
but
it.
I
Well, you're
appreciate
a
you.
delight to talk with. I'm thrilled to be able to be on your show.
Well, it's my
Really.
pleasure to have you here, and you know what? It's an important issue, and people. I've been fascinated by just the situation of the phenomenon of good and evil and its presence in all of us, because I do think every human being can have the capacity to do
Right,
evil things, and but most of us have the ability or strength to
right.
suppress it or know right from wrong and not do it. And those few people who don't and feed off of the ability to seduce other people, and it's just a really fascinating look into the human condition.
I
That
agree.
Yeah, well, that's why you do what you do, and I wish I could. I wish I had the brain power for that, but I don't. I
I
would
really
probably do more damage.
appreciate about it.
Anyways, thank you for getting up. I appreciate you being here. Let me take the book out before I say goodbye to you. Book is called "Summons to Berlin: My Memoir." Now, your last name, did I pronounce it wrong?
The way
Intrada.
he pronounced it, Trotter, but my father made it Intrator when he went into the American Army, so that people would understand how to spell it. But
Right.
you said it actually correctly.
Okay.
Um, I go by Intrator, but Intrator is really how it was.
Okay. Well, I'll say it both ways. Dr. Joanne
Okay.
Intrator and Intrada. It's been a pleasure. And if you're so inclined, please do come back sometime. I'd love to further this conversation and talk about this stuff. And I will be continuing. I'm going to read the book and continuing to plug it here. So thank you for being here. Thanks. Have a great
Thank you.
day. Bye. Fascinating stuff, folks, and important stuff. Get the book, read the book, and then share it with your family and friends. That's my advice. It is an important, really important subject that we can't afford to forget about, can't afford to just take lightly. And I think society is slipping down that path of really just forgetting and not caring as much as forgetting. Like, we have so much other stuff present, conditions that we need to be aware of, need to be conscious of, and trying to find solutions for, that something 75, 80 years ago might not seem all that relevant, especially if you're a young person. Your life is only 15 to 17, 18 years old. 80 years is a tremendous, you can't imagine that much time. Anyway, I'm going to take a short break here. True Fire is the best place to learn to play guitar online. You know that? You know that, right? And you can learn from your greatest guitar heroes and legends and players, and the best teachers online. True Fire, one-on-one instruction available, a whole lot of extra features, and it's growing. This just integrated with Jam Play, so good stuff going on there. True Fire, check it out.
Over 2 million guitar players worldwide learn, practice, and play with TrueFire. Our learning tools and massive library of video lessons will ignite your technical skills, harmonic knowledge, rhythm playing, and soloing chops. TrueFire's educators are the best in the biz, from Grammy Award winners to world-renowned artists. You'll have access to an unparalleled faculty of over 300 top-notch blues, rock, jazz, country, fingerstyle, and acoustic guitar educators. Using our desktop and mobile apps, you'll work with TrueFire's multi-angle video lessons on any device, anytime, anywhere. Integrated learning tools such as video synced tab and notation, slow-mo, looping, practice jam tracks, and many more handy controls accelerate your learning experience. TrueFire's style-specific learning paths guide you every step of the way. Use our assessment tools to find your starting point, then follow our lesson recommendations, and track your progress as you work through your personalized TrueFire study plan. Progress faster with private one-on-one instruction, group lessons, multi-track video jams, live streams, song lessons, student forums, TrueFire's Riff magazine, premium jam tracks, and much, much more. With thousands of 5-star ratings and reviews from amateur and pro players alike, you'll find yourself in good company with the world's most comprehensive guitar learning platform. Grab your guitar and ignite your musicality. Sign up free for an all-access trial today.
Sign up free. Invite musicality, they say. That guy was strumming a bass there. I got to watch the video again. I'm not going to play it again now. But that guy was strumming a bass. That's going to, that bothered me. Anyway, Dr. Joanne Intrater with the book, Summons to Berlin, my memoir. Listen, it's an important read. Talk about Nazis all the time here, and especially with here's the thing, folks. The Russia and Ukraine thing, and we hear about, oh, well, there are Nazis in Ukraine. Yeah, there are Nazis in Ukraine. There are Nazis in America. There are Nazis on Long Island. There are Nazis in Kansas City. There are Nazis everywhere. There are Nazis in Germany. There are Nazis in Israel. Yeah, there are. There are Nazis everywhere. But you have to understand the nature of World War II and the conflicts that went on there, especially where it started in Germany and Austria, and you had communists against Nazis, and people were picking sides, and you had to pick a side, communists against Nazis, and some people just went with the Nazis, not even really buying into the full, propaganda of all of it and the full platform of all of it, and definitely not really understanding that the Holocaust was coming, the final solution, as they put it. That wasn't in the start of Nazism in Nazi Germany. That wasn't from the start. So people were picking political sides, and then it developed into atrocities. And the more power they got, the more they were able to get atrocious. The root of atrocities, I guess. Anyway, it's an important lesson. So when they invaded Russia, Germans invaded Russia, the Nazis invaded Russia. Russians were communists, but there were also people who were anti-communist within the Soviet Union at that time, and they were taking the opposite position of communism. So yeah, there are people still aligned with Nazism as it was the opposition to communism. So that's where you get the idea where there can be Jewish Nazis, because they're Jews who are that strongly opposed to the idea of communism that they sided with the wrong people. And once you pick a team, and we see this in America. Once you pick a team, it's really hard to convince people to change their team, no matter what their team does. The dangers of the whole two-party world we live in. Well, not just the two-party system in America, but the two-party world communism versus Nazism. But there are Nazis everywhere. And so that's an important thing. When you hear people say, hey, there are Nazis in Ukraine. Yeah, there are Nazis in fucking Kansas City, folks. More Nazis in Kansas City than there are in all of Ukraine, by the way. Not that no Nazi is a good Nazi. I'm not trying to make excuses for it at all. But to try to paint it like Roseanne Barr as the Ukraine is a Nazi country, like Nazi Germany, that's so fucking far off the map. And the reason they are perpetuating that lie is because the people on the other side now are as atrocious and evil as the original Nazi empire. Now they haven't tried to wipe out 6 million Jews yet, but give them time. Putin would do that if he could. He would. He is he's on the same level as the evil Mr. Hitler. Anyway, big news for tomorrow. Greg Chaley will be here now. Greg Chaley, if you don't know, and I don't want to talk about Stanhope because I've talked to everybody about Stanhope. I've talked to Stanhope. I've talked to Andy about Stanhope. I've talked to Brett about Stanhope. We've talked to everybody who's ever known Doug Stanhope has at least mentioned him or passing or had a story about him. Not that I'm not interested in Doug Stanhope. I think I'm still a major fan, but I'm really interested in Greg Chaley for his story. It's a really interesting story. If you don't know, just a little of what I do know, and I can't say I know a lot about the man. Alaska, how he got there. Was he born there? He worked in radio. I believe it was college radio, but I don't know if it was AM or FM radio. That led to being the right-hand man or concierge type of guy for Mitch Hedberg. Fascinating guy. And I've wanted to talk to people who were close to Mitch Hedberg for forever because I'm fascinated by Mitch Hedberg's rise. There seemed to be a really drastic shift in his comedic voice that nobody ever talks about. I'm the only one that I know of who has ever broached the subject of. You find early clips of Hedberg, and he wasn't doing Mitch Hedberg, the Mitch Hedberg we know. He was doing the same material, but the delivery was not that Mitch Hedberg voice, that Mitch Hedberg intonation and cadence that we all got to know. So yeah, I'm fascinated by his experience with Hedberg, and then his musical background. I know he played bass. Why give that up? Was it just to cover band thing, wore him out, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to talk to Chaley and have that conversation with him. Going to be a good one, I think. He won't be here until the second hour tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I have an hour to fill tomorrow, but we'll work that out. We always do. Right now, I'm waiting our friend Robert Taylor, who is he's been pretty busy, working, training, and writing. That's what he does. He's a joke machine. Anyway, so let's see what's going on in the world. What's trending in the world that we can divert our attention away from now? I don't know. Why is Sam Harris? Oh, Sam Harris was on some pod. See, there are too many podcasts. People are overexposed, and ideas are overexposed. But Sam Harris was talking about vaccines, and what he said was that if COVID were a lot more dangerous, like a lot more lethal, deadly, people would not have been fighting the vaccine as hard. people would have been more open to having the government mandate vaccines if it were really deadly, really scary, like if everybody you knew was dying from it. And people are giving them shit for saying that. But I have to agree, that'd be if just consider this. COVID breaking out and people in your house start dropping dead. People in your family, you're in lockdown already, and everybody you know starts dying. Everybody you know starts dying. I mean, they're dropping like flies, and the government comes out with a vaccine. Would you or would you not be more willing to take the vaccine at that point? I would have to think common sense would say yes. If you see everybody dying, and it's basically a death sentence, you're going to get it, and you're going to die from it. You'd be far more willing to get the vaccine and far less opposed to it. So that's why he's trending, because he made that comment. It's not a crazy comment, but people just want to get outraged about stuff. Robert Taylor's here now. I got to play his music. I can't let him in the room until I play his music for him. It's kind of tricky. Couple of buttons I'm pushing. It's several buttons at once, but let's see if we get this right. Here we go. Buttons to push. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Hey, man. Good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm all Nazi'd out now.
Hey, you know what? I was listening to most of it. I used to work, well, I still do kind of. He was my dean where I teach, John Sanchez. I don't know if you know John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still work with him. He did the Hunting Hitler show on the History Channel. He was a war crimes prosecutor.
Now, let me ask you about this, because do you believe Hitler got away?
No,
You don't?
I don't think so. I mean,
I don't
yeah,
know.
I think it's like we were talking about the conspiracy theories with all the deep state and stuff like that. If only you can't keep secrets like that. Someone would have. It only takes one person, man, to
I know. Yeah. Well, but see, they never found the body, which or they claimed to have found the body, but then that was misidentified. It was just somebody who intentionally was made to look like him.
Well,
Where,
let me
go
put
ahead.
it like this. I don't think like in that Hunting Hitler series, I don't think Hitler escaped to Argentina and was living. He might have made it out of Berlin, but I think maybe even some of his own people might have killed him.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know what? Listen, for what we know about him, he probably wouldn't have lasted pretty.
No.
He was a meth addict,
Meth
cocaine
head, yeah.
addict. Yeah, he was just all messed up.
Yeah.
My son used to joke about that, like, because he said, because he was the first one that told me Hitler was a meth addict. I knew about cocaine, but I didn't even think crystal meth was a thing. Like, I didn't even think it was invented then. But apparently it wasn't, and he was on it. But he said, imagine this idea of being trapped in a German U-boat for 2 weeks under the Atlantic Ocean. You know, people don't know if German U-boats were not like modern submarines. They were cold, damp, dark, and really uncomfortable to begin with. But being trapped in there, you're just the pilot captain of this U-boat, and you're trapped in there with Hitler for 2 weeks.
That's what that you could make a great comedy skit about that.
Right.
How they turned on him because he didn't have any power anymore, and all of a sudden he's just like a nuisance.
And he's got to be the most annoying fuck
Yeah.
ever. He's on meth and heroin, meth and cocaine, trapped in this little cold, dark little room. He's got to be fucking the most annoying. Yeah. Shut the fuck up, you Nazi bastard.
You ever see the meme? It was going around. It's probably still out there. The one from that one movie. I can't remember what it is. It's in German, and they take the subtitles and they change. Somebody made a great one, man, years ago, where he was Lance. He was pissed off because Lance Armstrong was busted for the testing for drugs or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, man, they had some great memes out of that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know what, but Yeah, the whole Nazi thing has always been like a fascinating subject for me, and how society could fall into, because there were American Nazis. Lindbergh was an American Nazi.
You know, I was thinking about this too before. We're so desensitized to it because most Americans only know what they see on the History Channel,
Right,
or and there's a big goddamn difference, man. Because I've been to Dachau before. There's a
right.
big damn difference in watching it on the History Channel and walking through those gates at that place, man. It's not. I took
And
my
the
son
History
with.
Channel is just so full of shit. I mean,
Well,
as far as the ancient aliens and the search for Oak Island, whatever those things are, those are all like bullshit. Finding Bigfoot, all those things, and so you mix that in, and then it all becomes fucking bullshit, right?
well,
Even when they're telling the truth.
well. Not only that. I mean, they were telling the truth on their the documentaries about the concentration camp and stuff, but it's just the fact that it's in a black and white film. It happened 80 years ago or whatever like that, and we don't give a shit because it doesn't affect us directly. And but it's sanitized. You're watching it.
Right,
It's like
right,
watching a volcano on TV, right?
right.
There's a big damn difference between watching it on TV and being standing next to a volcano.
Right, and up next porn stars.
Yeah,
That come. Stay tuned for porn stars.
but
Yeah.
I took my son with me. He was like 14, something like that. And I tell you what, man, we were in there for probably 2 hours walking around. He didn't say a word the whole
Wow.
time we were in there because he
Wow.
realized where we were at.
Good stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
good education to have. That's important to have. What's going on with you? You doing some kind of military shows or something?
Well, no, I did that show up in Fayetteville, and I don't know, man. It's like one of the guys who was there. He's a vet, and he puts on shows up in Greenville, and he asked me to be on a fundraiser show. We're going to raise money for veterans. And so I posted, literally, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I posted the flyer that he sent me on Facebook. And within 10 minutes, James D. Benedetto down in Myrtle Beach, that books Rich Voss and
I got to get in touch with him again because
yeah. Well,
supposed to.
he messaged me like 5 minutes later. He says, "Hey, man, I need somebody to do this semi-formal gala for veterans in November. It's a fundraiser. Can you do 2 15-minute sets?" And within 10 minutes, I was booked for that.
And now we're doing, is that in South Carolina?
Yeah, that was in Myrtle Beach. Yeah.
Myrtle Beach. In November, Myrtle Beach is probably still pretty nice, right? No.
Yeah. Well, hell, last year it was like summer all year round with global warming or whatever.
Wow.
But in the wintertime, they get a lot of visitors. But yeah, it's in November, which it's the week after like Veterans Day and the Marine Corps birthday and
Right.
all that stuff. So I guess that's why it happens to be the weekend right after Veterans Day. Maybe that's why they're doing it.
I'm just looking for an email I got yesterday because I thought my first reaction was this must be something that I followed you on or signed up for something. It was a comedy show for veterans. Somebody sent me an email about it, and I was like, I didn't know this person. Like, how did I get on this mailing list? And I just assumed that you were involved in it. I can't find it now.
I'm not on the flyer yet because they had come up with a flyer before he booked me on the show. They got to create a new flyer for it.
All right. What else is going on? You got anything happening this weekend?
Yeah, I'll be in Durham, North Carolina again tomorrow night.
Oh, Durham. Good nights? No, not a good night.
No,
That's in Raleigh, right?
Yeah. It's right next. Yeah, it's next to Raleigh. It's called the Glass Jug Beer Lab or something like that.
Oh, brewery or something?
Yeah, it's the guy I was telling you about that books up there. He has shows 7 nights a week, and he does a show there once a month. Man, he's got shows everywhere, man.
Wow.
But I'm in, and I do 20 minutes. I'll feature. So every time I get to do 20 minutes, I just get to work out more material.
Are you doing that? Because here, I think I've said this probably many times. there was a guy, Albert Goshen, whose his stage name was Albert the Baker, and he was a magician, and he told me the difference between an amateur and a professional, in his opinion, and this stuck with me, and it still sticks with me to this day because there's a lot of truth in it. That an amateur magician is a guy who goes to the store, a magic store, every week and buys new tricks and illusions to do for the same people, where a professional is doing tried and true material for different audiences every single night.
Yeah,
So, are you working on perfecting your 20 minutes, or you were
yeah.
always adding new material?
Well, it's a little bit of both. This is a showcase. It's not open mic, so that's one of the deals is you bring your stuff that works, but you're always even with your stuff that works, you're always tweaking it.
Right.
You're always trying to punch it up. So even though I might be doing the same bits, there could be a couple new jokes in there. I could, and since last week, or when I was there last week or 2 weeks ago, I've already reworked some of those same bits and added more stuff. And so it's a little bit of both. But yeah, you're right. I'm trying to perfect the whole, going back to the World Series thing. The whole deal of that is to produce people who can perform as feature comics,
Right.
which is like 20 to 25, 30-minute sets. And that's what I'm trying. I mean, I've got you'll hear people say, "Oh yeah, man, I can do 30 minutes. I can do 40 minutes."
Does it ever get to the point where you stop tweaking? Like this set is this joke or
No,
this?
never,
No.
never. Here's what happens is I'll get it where it's good. I'm can run with it. And I feel good with it, but then I'll think of something else, and then I'll come up with something better. And so it's like I move that bit down the roster, and I bring this something that's better than the weakest one I have.
Right.
And ideally, what you want to do is you always want to be getting it until at some point you just got to go with it. It's like
That's it. Yeah.
because you start deconstructing it too much, and it just it'll ruin the joke. But you'll hear people say, "Oh, I can do 20 minutes. I got 20 minutes. I got that." Just because you can get on stage, I can get on stage and do 4 days if you'll bring me food in a porta potty where I can use the bathroom and stuff. But it's not going to be funny, And that's the difference is,
Right.
I'm trying to work this. I got it now where it's between 20 to 30 minutes of solid material, but I'm trying to get it where it's just nonstop. Once I get up there, it's not. There's no lull.
Right.
There's no law. It's just solid stuff, and that's what you keep doing. Is you just keep coming at, like driving back. You'll come up with something on the way back, and like, oh yeah, I could do that, And so it's like you're saying, you're always trying to tighten it up where you get, and that's what I'm doing now because I've been featuring for the last 6 months or whatever. I'm trying to get it where I got 20 to 30 minutes of like Dave Attell material where there's no freaking letdown. Once he picks up that microphone, man, there's no freaking fluff in his shit. There's no fluff.
He's so good, man. I get moment because yesterday I was driving my wife around while she was doing errands. I was going to Home Depot and Walmart, and I bores the hell out of me. And then I'm writing in my head while she's doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I had this idea that I thought was hysterical during the day yesterday. And then I got home and I started to write it down. I was like, it's the stupidest fucking waste of time. But I was thinking of a bit where you don't have to tell the audience the joke. They can write their own jokes. All you're doing is giving them punchlines. And explain to them comedy is all about setup and punchline.
Right.
Well, I'm going to let you do the setup. I'm just going to tell you the punchline. And if they were funny enough lines that everybody could have their own joke to it. And I was thinking that was a hysterical good idea but then I was like, by the time I went home to write it, I only had like one or two good like lines that worked into that. Like
I'll do that. I do that a lot where it seems like it's always at nighttime. Everything seems like a good idea. And I'll come up with this stuff and like, oh man, that's really good. And then the next day I'll start looking at them like, damn. I'm like,
it's funny.
Yeah, I'm like, that doesn't sound like it did last night. I did one where I'm doing those I do those shorts, those jokes at open mic I'll write like the day before just so I can make short videos. I had one the other night. I'll tell you the joke, but I screwed it up. I was like, oh, this is a good joke. And I got in such a hurry to do it, I left out the most important part of the joke in the premise. And when I did the punchline, I got halfway through the punchline. I'm like, God damn, I forgot. Here was the joke. It happened last week. I saw a 28-year-old professional male dancer was stabbed to death at a gas station in New York for voguing to a Beyonce song, right? Witnesses said a 17-year-old male was shouting anti-gay slurs before he attacked him. And I said, which just goes to show that no matter how far we think we've come as a country and as a society, not everybody enjoys Beyonce. but when I did the setup, I forgot and left out
That's it, boy, Beyonce part.
He's voguing to the Beyonce song. So when I did the end of it with the Beyonce, everybody just looked at me like, "What the fuck?
What
Man?
the fuck does that have to do with anything?"
Yeah. They look, and the comics love stuff like that because they know you just ate shit, and they love to watch. Comics love to watch other comics bomb like that. And I did it, and I was like, and I just told him right down, like, yeah, I screwed that one up. I said it works better when you actually do the premise. Because that's a pretty good joke, man. But
Yeah.
I screwed it up from the get-go, and I was like, God, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah, it definitely is a good joke, but it won't work without including Beyonce in the setup.
Yeah, I know, man. But that's but like you said, you come up with these ideas. For me, it's always at nighttime. Everything's set, and I had to make myself stop because I'll come up with these ideas like, oh man, I'm going to message this guy right now. Oh, I'm going to send this thing out. I'm going to call this book or whatever. And I don't do it. And then the next day I start thinking, I'm like, damn, I'm glad I didn't message that guy. I can't even do that night, or I got to go somewhere else, or that would have been stupid, or it never fails in the morning. I wake up, I start second guessing everything. I'm like, damn, I can't. I'm like, that joke's not going to work. But then as the afternoon rolls around, it's like, I don't know what the deal is. It's some kind of psychiatric thing or something. I don't know. Man. Hey, I was going to tell you, because I know you're a fan or whatever. I was watching a podcast yesterday. Nate Bargatze was on Busting with the Boys. You ever see that where they sit in that bus? It's like two former pro football players, and they just interview people. They like comedians. And Nate Bargatze was on there. It was pretty good, man. He was talking a lot about when he was coming up and all these stories, man. But one thing he said, I might try to clip that thing and post it. He said, you got all these, the guy was like, you got any advice for up and coming comics, new comics? He said, I would say the most important thing I could say, you got all these guys, they've been doing comedy for a freaking month or whatever, and they want to start a podcast, and they're doing this, and they're doing 10 different things and all this stuff. He says, my advice would be become great at one thing, right? He said, your most important thing in comedy is your act. He said, spend your time developing an act. And that's true. You'll see all these guys that don't have 2 minutes of good material, and they got 3 podcasts.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy shit.
Yep.
That's like if somebody buying a guitar, to learn how to play guitar, and they're already trying to book freaking gigs,
right,
or something, and they can't even play a guitar.
Yeah. There are definitely too many podcasts, and there are people who now podcasting has become like, I can have my own television show, but they're not. It's just really the same, and comedians sitting around just fucking goofing on each other or whatever they do, getting drunk or high or whatever, and just shooting the breeze. That can offer some very funny moments, but it's not structured enough. And I think too many people think that it looks easy when, all right, you can get Louis J. Gomez and his friends, Shane Gillis and Joe List all in one room, and they'll be really funny. But too many young people who haven't paid their dues in comedy think that they can do that. We'll just get 4 of my open mic night buds together and just create something that will be a compelling podcast. And it's just
the thing is, the people who are the big names that in the podcast and stuff like that, the comedians and stuff, they're doing it for one reason: to sell tickets. Right? They're touring. People know who they are in the first place. and they're trying to grow their audience to sell tickets where they go. I mean, that's just a fact. If you don't even have 2 minutes of material and you're doing open mics, you can't. One, you're not going to build an audience because nobody's going to watch the podcast in the first place because they don't know who you are.
Right.
And then if they ever turn it on and they watch a minute of it, they're going to turn it off. So you should. I mean, if you don't have an act, and just say they did watch the podcast, and you said, "Oh, I'm going to be at the such and such open mic or so," and they actually showed up, and you didn't have 2 minutes of material.
Yeah,
then
yeah.
What it defeats the purpose. But he told a story, man. I think he said he'd never talked about it before or something like that. I don't know, but he was talking about when he opened for Louis C.K. right, and Louis C.K. treated him like shit. He said Hannibal Buress was supposed to be on the show too and didn't show up, and Nate was there. And he went up and did his time, and he came off, and he was in the green room. And when Louis C.K. went up, he roasted Nate Bargatze and made fun of one of his jokes when he went up. And he said it made him feel like shit. Like,
wow.
Like he said he said later on he figured maybe he got whatever, he got over it or whatever. But they asked him, they're like, "What's one of the worst moments you ever had in comedy?" And he said that was.
If you could send me that link, if you can find it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you after this.
Yeah.
It's like a 4.5 interview, man.
I want to segue into something from that, but I would just on Nate, because a lot like Hedberg, I'm thinking, because I'm analyzing why I like Nate Bargatze, because a lot of what he says, if I said it, it wouldn't be funny. If I said it in my voice, it wouldn't be funny. It's not the joke; it's his delivery sometimes of it, and his personality, and the way he's expressing those things that makes it funny. And you can't teach that. You can't teach, personality.
Well, he talks about that too. He talks about exactly what you're talking about when he first went to Chicago for a little while, and then he went to New York. And he's talking about, if you watched his comedy when he was in New York and first started, he was doing dirty stuff. He was doing just like everybody else. And then I don't remember exactly how it came about, but at some point he found his persona, his voice. He locked it. He figured out what was him and what was basically what it is, man. I heard Jon Stewart say it one time. He said, your persona, you found your persona is when you get on stage and you can channel what you actually think and believe. What you're walking, when you can do that on stage, when it's not an act, when that's who you are.
Right.
It's natural. It's like organic. And that's what Jason Rowland was telling me before too, on a couple of jokes I did. He said, you got laughs on it, but it's not as good as it could be. He said, because it's not organic. It doesn't, when I hear that joke coming from you, I don't believe it.
Right.
And it's like you're doing an act.
Right.
You're going up and you're trying to perform. And when you go up, you shouldn't be trying to perform. You should be trying to have a conversation. Or that's what you are performing, but it should come over as.
It's got to feel authentic.
Yeah, you're just talking to them about something.
Yeah, I'll give people an example of, and this won't be funny because it will be in my voice of telling you what Nate Bargatze says, because he doesn't do this piece anymore, so I feel comfortable, even if I'm ruining it for him and all that stuff. But he talks about growing up Christian, and he, in the 80s and 90s, his parents converted to Christianity when he was born. So he said that, that's the most Christian you can get. He said, I think Jesus had more fun than me. And he said, I remember when The Simpsons came on, and I was just like, well, I guess we're just going to have R-rated movies on TV now. And like the crowd fucking broke up. That was hysterical to them. Yeah. There's nothing funny about that line. I guess we're just going to have R-rated movies on TV now. But his delivery of it and his personality makes it really funny. And the audience reacted with like robust laughter at that. Well, but if I say it's not, like, what the fuck is funny about that?
But it's relatable to him too because of who his audience is.
Right.
He has families and stuff out there with kids that watch it, and a lot of it's just like Dusty Slay, the same deal. Like his audience can relate to what he's talking about because most of his audience is NASCAR, people who grew up down south, and it doesn't have to be from down south. It's just ordinary people.
Right.
Is what it is, you know. And when you talk about stuff that they can like, that helped me too. When Jason was telling me, he was like, you gotta open up with this stuff I do about South Carolina. He said, you got to open up with that about growing up in South Carolina in the 70s. That's who you are. And that lets them know from the first thing out of your mouth of who they're listening to and what they're getting ready to hear.
Yeah.
You know, and it does. And I'm telling you, man, it's the same thing. I can talk about stuff that doesn't have a setup or a punchline, but they laugh at it like shit about my parents. Like when I was growing up, stuff how they'd lock us out of the house in the summertime and we couldn't come back in until dinner time. You know, we'd roam the neighborhoods and
wow.
But yeah,
well, when my parents locked the door, that meant because they were having sex.
Mine might have been no. It was my dad was usually gone to work, and my mom would lock the door, and but I was in a small town, and everybody else's parents did that too, and we would just all the kids would be together playing baseball or getting into some shit. I mean,
I had a memory last night of when my parents forgot to lock the door. My mom was giving my dad a blowjob on the couch.
You know what though, man? That would be funny as shit. That's funny as shit.
It's a scar I carry with me.
but people laugh at that because one is true. The truth is funnier than anything else, man.
Yeah.
But what I talk about is like I'll say, you know, and my mom used to say this was true. She would latch the screen door behind us, but the last thing she said when she was latching the screen door was, "Don't talk to strangers." She's locking us out of the damn house and telling us not to talk to strangers, right? You know, but we would, and I make a joke about how we cruise around on our big wheels on the streets looking for pedophiles, right? Just because we were so hot and freaking thirsty or whatever like that. But it was true. If we were out playing something and some neighbor, like there was a lot of older ladies that just widows that lived in the neighborhood, and they were always trying to get you to mow their lawn, do some kind of work for like no damn money. But every now and then they're like, "Oh, you guys want some lemonade or some shit like that," you know? And we'd run right up in the house, man. They could have been serial killers or some shit.
Right.
You know?
Where I wanted to segue before, because you were talking about Nate carrying around a scar that Louis C.K. gave him, and there's this whole industry in the podcast, not podcasting, but YouTubers that watch podcasts and then analyze them and talk shit about everybody in the, you know, whether it's Brendan Schaub. Now, Bert Kreischer is
watching one yesterday.
He's getting a lot of hate from those guys who do the podcast, not podcast, a lot of the YouTubers who do analyzing of podcasts, and they're putting a lot of hate towards Bert Kreischer. One of the guys who I caught, he was talking about Joe List.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up to you today. I saw it too.
Yeah, Joe List and Bert Kreischer having a thing, and I think it's because of something Kreischer did before List was blue.
Joe List ordered pizza. Yeah. Bert Kreischer went to get. It was at Mark Norman's bachelor party in Florida. They were all there. And Bert went to get Thai food from this restaurant, but he stayed there and drank for 2 hours. And Joe List ordered some pizza because he was hungry. And when Bert got back, he blew up because Joe List ordered pizza after he had already ordered Thai food. That was the whole. Yeah, that was.
Oh man, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but you're right. I've seen at least. This was yesterday too. I saw a handful of different podcasts of why everybody's pissed.
What happened to Bert? Yeah, now he's like because it used to be Brendan Schaub was the most hated man in comedy. Now they're calling Bert Kreischer one of the most hated men, and saying even like his friend Rogan and even Segura is getting sick of him to some extent. I don't know if any of that's true or that's just the perception of these fucking guys who YouTube all the time. But the just the bashing of Bert Kreischer, there's a Kreischer. It's becoming more and more prevalent. You're seeing more and more of them.
You know what I saw this morning? Just a while ago, I was clicking by and saw there's one of the guys on there saying the real reason why Bert's movie bombed.
Did
Right.
it bomb though? I thought he made a lot of money on that.
I don't know about that because it kind of disappeared like a week after it
It
came
did.
out.
It didn't. It's
Yeah,
not.
so
Yeah.
I'm not sure about it. I had forgot about it until I saw that thing. I'm like, oh yeah, he did have a movie, you know. So, but they're always looking for that sales. That's clickbait, man. I clicked, you know, that if you put something on there, Burt Kreischer is great. Nobody's going to click on that,
Right.
you know. But
Yeah. Yeah.
those guys, uh, I don't think he's got a problem with Tom Segura. He probably aggravates the shit out of him. I can imagine he
Well,
get him.
but they cherry pick these little clips where people are annoyed with them or something,
Yeah.
and they make it seem like it's a big fight. But the reason I brought that up was last night around midnight, Jackie Martling surfaced. Jackie will be on with me, I think, next Wednesday. But he texted me in the middle of the night. He wanted to thank me because of me. He did a 2-hour podcast with Bert Kreischer yesterday.
Oh, really?
But Jackie is not necessary as much as he's a show business guy, knows everybody in show business. He's not well connected to the modern comedy scene, and
Right.
I don't think he really knew who Bert Kreischer was before he got on the podcast. But he's crediting me with getting him on there, and I was like,
That's all right.
I had nothing to fucking do with that
Oh, just
whatsoever.
because he did your podcast, or he never did
No,
podcasts?
because Willie, who was a regular on the podcast, who was kind of persona non grata until we don't see eye to eye
Right.
on how he went to South Dakota, but he had sent a letter. He heard Bert Kreischer talking about being a fan of Howard Stern and sent him an email or something and said, I could get you Jackie Martling on the show, and then it happened that way. And Jackie knows Will through me, so he was giving me credit for it. I don't want to take any credit for that. It's not. It's all Will's doing. Good for Will. Yeah, I'm glad he's making those connections and doing that kind of stuff. He's always had a good heart. But thing is, Jackie was really high on the fact because Bert Kreischer's podcast, the Bertcast, is going to get probably 2 million
Yeah,
views.
that'll blow Jackie up again. He'll get a big bump off of that.
Right. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell him that, right now the comedy world is not so but that won't the people who listen to his podcast are still listening to his podcast and
But
still will.
have you noticed though, like over this month, the last few weeks on these podcasts, especially Rogan always has different people on there, but especially Burt Kreischer, Theo Vaughn, they're having not all these people on there that aren't on a lot of, they're like looking for guests.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Theo had Hulk Hogan on 2 weeks ago. Ric
And
Flair's on
Ric
there.
Flair, right. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, that tells me a lot about Theo Von. That, you say what you want. I mean, there are professional wrestling fans who understand it as entertainment, but there are other people who really believe it's sport. And there's athleticism. There's difference between athleticism and sport. And Theo strikes me as a guy who always thought the WWF or whatever it became, World Wrestling Federation, whatever the
Yeah,
fuck it
yeah.
is now, they that it was real sport, and it's not sport. It's entertainment with great, huge athletes in it, but
Yeah.
they're not fucking hitting people in the heads with chairs. Those
Yeah,
people would be
I think,
dead.
yeah, I think he grew up thinking it was real, but he doesn't think it's real now. And Ric Flair that was one of the first things Ric Flair was like, hell yeah, it's fake, and all this stuff like that. He said, the whole scripted thing, but it's ridiculous because I think Ric Flair was high as a kite anyway. He sells weed down in Florida now. That's what he moved down to Florida. He's got his own thing, but he had shades on the whole time. And every now and then he lifted his shades up and his eyes were almost closed, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and the reason I think he was high because a couple of times Theo said something stupid and Ric Flair started laughing and he couldn't stop laughing. He was like, the whole time. And he was just, how some of the stupid shit Theo says or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And
I don't know anything about wrestling. I mean, Hulk Hogan I know, and Ric Flair I know the names, but
I grew up around all that stuff. I remember, this will show you, my grandfather every Saturday morning, he watched, it was Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling out of Charlotte. This was before it was like Vince McMahon and all that, worldwide stuff. and the Anderson brothers were on there, and they brought their cousin. The first Ric Flair was their cousin from Minnesota. I watched it with my grandfather. My grandfather died in like 1973, right?
Wow.
That's when Ric Flair first started when I was in junior high school. But we grew up with all that stuff. And Ric Flair was living in Charlotte until a couple of years ago. He used to come down here to Columbia to the football games. Steve Spurrier would bring him down and all that. But he's like, I grew up where they had like these, I call them minor leagues, but they're not even that. They were like these wannabe wrestling federations where guys who worked at like the freaking Firestone tire place or whatever, they'd wrestle a couple nights a week and stuff. And I was the first, they had wrestling at my high school for the first time. And my math teacher was a wrestling coach. He came in and he tried to talk everybody in math class to being on the wrestling team. And I was horrible. This was just math or arithmetic. It wasn't algebra or anything.
Right.
And like, so I went out and I weighed it was the 10th grade. I was like 6'1" or something. I wrestled. I was 117 pounds. But, hey, I'm telling you, man. Right. But what they did before the wrestling season for this fundraiser was we had to go out and they mowed the lawn at the outdoor football field and drug the bleachers over and everything. And they brought this wrestling. I think it was called IWA, International Wrestling. It was a hack thing.
IWA, Issues with Andy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, but the star, this guy's name was Sonny Black Cat King. He was the star. He drove up into the place in his Vega. He had, remember those old cars, the Vegas that were like the Pintos. He was the star, and he's driving a Vega. But the thing about it was, we were there in the afternoon helping them set up, and they were like throwing us across the ring, showing us how to suplex and stuff like that. But I took those guys home with me for dinner, and my mom washed their laundry, did their laundry, like 3 of their laundries. And to her day she died, she never let me forget about the stuff. But I saw some of the behind the scenes. I saw how they put the ring together and why, all that stuff like that. But it's like I liken it to the carnival. It's like the carnival, the traveling carnival.
Right.
That's all it is, man.
Yeah. And I grew up before that. There were, long before the WWF and Hulk Hogan days, there was like Beautiful Bobby and all those people, Gorgeous George.
Yeah.
And it was really small time. And, it was, I think Vince McMahon changed it and made it more big time.
Oh, yeah.
And
his dad did, Vince McMahon Sr. was the one who did it, and then Vince took over it and blew it up even bigger.
Right. Yeah, and there was definitely some mob connections there too. Not that I don't want to get rubbed out for saying
they just indicted Vince McMahon last week again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on something like that. I don't know what it was, but yeah, it's Theo. I like Theo. I'm just saying I wouldn't pay to see him do comedy because
I think he's a dumb guy. I do. I think.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I didn't want to say that, but they're laughing at him a lot of times, not with him.
Right, and I don't. I have one of the things I admire people. One of the things I value is authentic loyalty. Like not loyalty in the sense that if I would take a bullet for you and all that kind of stuff, but loyalty in the sense that you don't betray your friends, you don't lie about your friends, and if shit happens, you handle it directly. And I know that shit with Brendan Schaub, that shit rubs me the wrong way in that.
Yeah.
He knew, somebody asked him where he got his nickname from, and it's well documented.
He did that yesterday on the podcast, the Rat King. He showed a video of him pretending like he's Ric Flair, but he's doing that character, the Rat King or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And Brendan Schaub gave him that nickname, and then somebody asked him, like right after he had his breakup with Brendan Schaub, they asked him, how come they call you the Rat King? I don't know, man. Somebody must have thought I looked like a rat or something.
Yeah, he knew what it was.
Come on, fuckhead. If somebody asks you that question, you say, I don't want to answer that. It's a private thing, and
what probably happened is one of the other guys got in his head and told, while everybody was cutting ties with Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen, and probably told him, "Hey, man, you need to
That's
separate
exactly
yourself
what
from those guys."
happened. Yeah.
Yeah,
But if you're friends with somebody, stand by them, even
yeah,
though, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that bothers me about Theo. So
There's a few of them like that too. You saw, when certain things happen, they separate themselves.
right,
Well, with Chris D'Elia,
yeah,
I mean, they were all on his bandwagon. Then all of a sudden, you got Whitney Cummings and all of them that were preaching this, gospel about him and stuff like that. But now he's back. He's on the Brendan Shaw podcast.
right,
And Brian Callen. They all jumped on. Bastion. Like, I don't know if any of that stuff was true or not, but I'm just saying.
yeah.
They all cut ties with those guys.
I don't get though. I never thought Brian Callen was funny. He's never said anything that made me laugh. I don't get his appeal and why people even like him. But he's another one who was on that Me Too list that people were
Yeah.
boycotting and all that kind of stuff. Not my dislike of him came long before he was on that Me Too list. I just never thought there was anything funny about the guy. And
Yeah.
I know that's all subjective, but so I don't understand that. But it is interesting that Jackie got his 2 hours on the broadcast.
Did he go out there, or did they just do Zoom?
It had to be a Zoom because he was calling me. He was texting me from a club, which at midnight. Like, what are you doing in a club, you old man? Like, but local because he had his show when he had his show on last night, Stand Up Memories at 7 p.m. And Tom Cotter was on that. Who was that? Sticks and Stones comedy tonight in the Hamptons, in Southampton, New York. So I'm sure it was local. He must have zoomed in, unless Bird is in town.
You know what? 90% of the whole freaking podcast is going to be Bert telling stories about himself when he watched Howard Stern, or the funniest thing that ever happened to him from Howard Stern. Or it won't be about Jackie. It'll start off, he'll be asking Jackie questions, and next thing you know, he's turned it around where he's telling how watching Howard Stern change his life, and that's the big knock on him, is how he gets people on there, and he turns every interview into a story about him.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see how it came out.
Yeah. You know what? I want to show this because now that I think of it, it couldn't have been a Zoom meeting because of
he might have been in New York for something and he does that sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm thinking because of this. This is what he sent me there. So he was in the same room with him, obviously. And this
he's on tour. Bert's on tour, so if they were up around that area, he might have been on tour and did it with him.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess so. Either he's in New York or Jackie went wherever he is. I think it's probably the first one. I think Bert's probably in New York. But interesting though. So I don't know. I don't think it's out yet. I think he's one of those guys who pre-records it and edits it and all that stuff. So it should be interesting to see if Jackie gets a boost on that. But he'll be with us on Wednesday. I think Wednesday or Thursday next week. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Wednesday though. And I got a lot to talk to him about his documentary. Documentary leaves a lot of open questions about who was on it, who talks about him in it, and who's featured in it, and who's not.
Huh.
So
I wonder if Artie Lang's on it.
Who?
Artie Lang.
Yeah, Artie Lang is in it.
Is he in it?
Yeah. And that's part of the curiosity because some of his friends from the Howard Stern show, Fred Norris and Robin Quivers, who he claims to still have a good relationship, they're not commenting on it at all.
Yeah.
And my buddy Ralph, who was a really big Howard Stern fan, he said, I bet you Howard forbid everybody, don't have anything to do with it because he's fucked up like that. He's like petty like that. Don't you dare take part in this. The only person from the Howard Stern show are people who were excommunicated. Stuttering John and some other rat packer that I didn't know of was on there. But the people who were on there commenting were also raised some questions, like Penn Jillette, Gilbert Gottfried, and all those people who, Gilbert must have been dying when he was
I was just getting ready to say, yeah. When did he? That had to be.
I think they taped it before COVID even, but it took a while to get edited and distributed and all that stuff. But
Is it
just
out yet?
the documentary, yeah, it was number 4 on Apple's streaming movies list just last week. It might be higher than that now. It's called the
Yeah, I
Joke
want to check
Man.
that out.
Yeah, goes really fast. Like it got to the end, and I was like, wow, it's over already. I couldn't believe it was over already. I found it very entertaining. I do have a lot of questions for Jackie about it, and I'll ask him those Wednesday. You know what I'm going to ask him? He's got small hands, like smaller than mine. I mean, I have fat hands, but they're not long finger. And in the end of the movie, not to give anything away, it's not like a spoiler alert here. He does a lot of swimming on his own private beach, and at night goes out into the Long Island Sound and swims naked. And he's coming walking up from the beach, and he's hiding his dick and balls with his little small hand. Like, how small is your dick and balls? That's gonna be my first question, man. What do you got? Like a fucking micro penis there? Because he's hiding everything with one hand. You can't see anything.
Shrinkage.
One little.
It's shrinkage from the water.
Yeah, the water was cold. I get it. Yeah,
like the Seinfeld episode with George when he had shrinkage.
Yeah. I was in the pool. I was in the Sound, but still, even with all the shrinkage, your balls don't shrink. Your dick shrinks, but your balls don't shrink. And to hide everything in one little hand like that,
man, I told you when I used to lifeguard over in Bridgeport, that water's so nasty in the Sound.
Yeah.
It's a wonder he hadn't got hepatitis.
Yeah. There's all of that. Now, by the way, I'm just a little plug for me. I'm September 9th. I'm playing the Save the Great South Bay Festival. This is the most. I'm surprised they're charging $125 admission per person to see my band. That's the most that anybody's ever paid.
Where's that? Where's it going to be?
It's at the Long Island Yacht Club in Babylon, New York.
Yeah. But hopefully it turns out better than that gig I had at the Marina Del Rey Yacht Club.
Yeah. But I'm just like, I just want to tell the owners, like, what, asking $125 to see my band, $125 per person to see my band. It's a little much. I know it's a good cause.
They're not paying to see your band. That's one of those deals where they pay just to come for the social thing,
right?
And that you're the entertainment,
right?
That's like that thing I was at. People had to pay like $100 to go to that banquet thing. They didn't pay to come see me. They weren't paying $100 to come see me. I was just there.
Right. Well, they asked me to do the flyer featuring the band prominently on it, so I guess they are selling it. But again, I don't. People are going to look at it like, I'm paying $125 for this. I mean, couldn't they get $125? Couldn't they get somebody I heard of?
you guys might blow up after that.
Oh no, that's never going to happen. We blew up years ago. We had our, in our early 40s to mid 40s, we had our close encounter with fame and all that kind of stuff, as big as we were ever going to blow up. But now, we're old. We ain't gonna fucking blow up. We're gonna blow up the bathroom.
That's what. What? At least you probably get a good meal. They usually let you eat when you go to those gigs like that, those big fundraiser banquets or whatever.
Yeah,
get some good food.
We should get the band sponsored by like what the prostate thing, prostate medicine.
I know. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, Free Flow or something like Flow Max. Flow Max.
Flow Max. Is that
it?
Flow Naze, or is that a nasal? Oh, that's a nasal spray, Flow Naze.
Yeah.
You don't want to stick that up your butt.
Right. The Rockin' 45s are proudly sponsored by Flow Max, and then we'll see the whole band sitting around pissing. Yeah, pissing easily. That would be a good thing. Anyway, so yeah, good luck in Durham this week. My brother's back. I'll tell him. Give me the location. I'll see if I can send him out there. If he doesn't have like AA meetings and stuff to go to, I'm sure he'll be happy to go out there. It's not too far.
I gotta check the weather. It looks like the weather's supposed to be good tomorrow night. I think it's outdoors.
Oh,
I don't like doing outdoor shows, man. But
yeah, Well, I do. I love because playing music outdoors is the best. I mean, under the stars.
Yeah, that's different though. Music, you don't have to pay attention outdoors. You just listen to the music. But if you're out there to see comedy, you got to be able to hear
Right.
cars go by, freaking fire trucks and shit.
Did I tell